Hollywood once sold Tab Hunter as the perfect dream of American women. But the man whose face appeared on thousands of posters had to spend years living in fear that a single photograph, a rumor, or a midnight phone call could burn his entire career to the ground. On screen, he was a symbol of masculinity, with blonde hair, a muscular physique, and a face that seemed almost custom-made for the Technicolor era. In real life, he was forced to play a role more brutal than any character he ever portrayed in a movie, pretending to be the person Hollywood wanted the public to believe he was. Tab Hunter was once desired by millions of women, yet at one point, he considered entering a loveless marriage simply to avoid being destroyed by Hollywood. Hard to believe, isn't it? The man promoted as the embodiment of freedom was barely allowed to decide whom he could love. If you want me to explore any more movies, TV shows, or Hollywood secrets, just comment right below. And I'm Ryan. Please like and subscribe to the channel to start exploring the main content of this video with me. A troubled beginning. Before the name Tab Hunter appeared on theater marquees, he was known as Arthur Andrew Gallion. He was born on July 11, 1931 in Manhattan, into a family where peace had almost never existed. From the first moments of his life, Arthur was not welcomed with the joy that every child deserved. According to the story Tab later told, his father entered the hospital after his son was born, handed his wife some candy, and quickly left. There was no warm embrace, no sense of pride, and no sign that he was ready to become a father. Tab's early years were overshadowed by instability and his father's violent behavior. His mother, a deeply devout Catholic woman of German descent, regularly became the target of her husband's anger. The home that should have protected the children instead became a place where they were constantly on guard. Eventually, Tab's maternal grandfather had to intervene. He bought clothes for his daughter and two grandsons, then helped them escape the man who was tearing the family apart. They moved to San Francisco, taking very few possessions with them and having almost no security for the future. Their new life was far from easy. Tab's mother had to work constantly to support the family, which meant she was often away from home. Arthur and his older brother Walter had to learn how to take care of each other. Remarkably, Walter was only about 11 months older than his younger brother, yet he often had to act as his protector. The family moved constantly in search of work and lower living costs. Every time Arthur became close to a friend, he faced the possibility of having to leave again. Those repeated goodbyes made the boy reserved, independent, and cautious with his emotions from a very young age. I think that childhood taught Tab a skill that both saved him and caused him pain. He learned how to adapt to any room, read other people's emotions, and hide what he was truly feeling. Years later, Hollywood would exploit that ability with cold efficiency. Even though she had little money, Tab's mother still tried to create happy memories for her sons. She could not afford to take them to the movies regularly, so she brought the two boys to shipyards to watch enormous vessels being launched. On one such occasion, Arthur saw Shirley Temple appear before a crowd. He watched people cheer, push forward, and stare at the little girl with admiration. It was the first time Arthur understood how a movie star could transform an entire space. He did not yet know how to enter that world. He had no relatives working in the industry and no family wealthy enough to pay for expensive acting lessons. All Arthur had was a striking appearance, good health, and a powerful urge to escape a life of hardship. Before the movie industry found him, Arthur worked several different jobs to support himself. The job he loved most involved horses. He cared for stables, rode horses, and spent time with animals he found much easier to trust than many of the people around him. His love for horses was not a passing interest. It stayed with him throughout his life, even after his fame had faded. To Tab, horses did not require him to play a heartthrob, did not care about rumors, and did not force him to explain who he was. His first opportunity came when actor Dick Clayton visited the place where Arthur worked for a photo shoot. Clayton immediately recognized that the young man standing before him had the height, face, and physique Hollywood usually sought in a leading man. Clayton told Arthur to contact him if he was serious about entering the movie business. Most young men probably would have rushed toward the opportunity immediately. Arthur did not. He continued working at the stable as though he still could not believe that a casual offer might open a real door. Instead of going to Hollywood, Arthur enlisted in the United States Coast Guard by lying about his age. That decision revealed how deeply he longed to grow up and find a clearly defined place in the world. But the lie could not last. Arthur's real age was discovered after members of his unit visited a bar that showed films. Questions began to arise, his records were reviewed, and his superiors realized that the young man was not old enough to serve. He was discharged before he could build a future there. Becoming Tab Hunter. That setback brought Arthur back to Dick Clayton's offer. This time, he contacted Clayton, and their meeting led him to Henry Wilson, an agent capable of turning unknown young men into products Hollywood desperately wanted. Wilson was famous for discovering attractive young actors and reinventing their public images. He had worked with Rock Hudson and understood exactly how Hollywood wanted a male idol to look, speak, and appear in public, including which women should be seen beside him. Arthur Andrew Gallion was not considered a name glamorous enough for movie theaters. Henry Wilson helped transform him into Tab Hunter, a name that was short, strong, and easy to print on posters. In just a few syllables, the young man from a broken family was packaged as an entirely new image. But being renamed also carried a bitter meaning. Hollywood did not merely change his name. It began editing every part of him, from the way he dressed and stood in front of a camera to the romantic stories the public was allowed to hear. His earliest roles did not immediately turn Tab into a star. He appeared in a small role in The Lawless, but even his limited screen time was enough to attract the attention of some people in the industry. The camera loved his face, and his athletic build made producers see enormous commercial potential. However, before his career had even found stable ground, one chaotic night nearly ended everything. Tab attended a gathering that the press later described as an all-male pajama party. Someone called the police, and the house was quickly consumed by panic. When the police arrived, the people present tried to remain calm and pretend that nothing unusual was happening. Tab was eventually arrested on a charge related to disorderly conduct. The incident did not immediately become a national scandal, but it created a ticking time bomb in his personal record. At that time, simply being suspected of being gay could cost an actor roles, contracts, and access to powerful social circles. Studios did not need proof. They only needed to fear that audiences would stop believing in the masculine image being sold on screen. Tab continued moving forward as though the arrest had never happened. Island of Desire brought him greater attention. The movie made heavy use of Tab's appearance, frequently showing him shirtless, tanned, and physically fit in the style expected of a 1950s heartthrob. Female audiences adored him. Magazines published his photographs. Studios saw profits. But the heartbreaking contradiction was that the more he became an object of desire for women, the more careful Tab had to be about his genuine feelings for men. He had recognized that difference as far back as his years in Catholic school. Religion had once been a place where Tab hoped to find guidance, but his experiences there left him carrying shame for many years. He later described being subjected to inappropriate behavior by a priest. Afterward, when Tabb tried to share his private struggles with another clergyman, he did not receive the understanding he had hoped for. Instead of helping a young man understand himself, the priest's harsh reaction made Tabb feel condemned and excluded from the compassion of his faith. That wound drove him away from Catholicism for a long time. The sad thing was that Tabb did not hate his faith. He simply could not accept the way certain people used religion to make him believe he was unworthy of love. He once described his situation through a painful contradiction. When he became intimate with a man, he feared that he was violating everything he had been taught as a child. But if he built a life with a woman solely to satisfy society, he knew he would be deceiving both that woman and himself. That was the emotional prison no camera ever captured. On the outside, Tabb smiled for reporters, signed autographs for fans, and posed like a man with no worries at all. On the inside, he constantly had to consider whether an affectionate gesture might become evidence against him. During that period, Tabb had a romantic relationship with figure skater Ronnie Robertson. The two shared a love of skating, one of the activities Tabb pursued seriously outside the movie industry. Their private time together gave him a rare sense of normalcy, but even the ice rink could not escape the rumors. Every time they appeared together, people watched them. Robertson was reportedly pressured by members of the skating world, where a person's public image could determine opportunities to compete internationally. In the end, their careers became a wall between them. Robertson chose his competitive path, while Tabb was left with the bitter lesson that in their world, love was often the first thing sacrificed when fame was in danger. Fame, scandal, and forbidden love. In Hollywood, Tabb's professional fortunes continued to rise. He fought through numerous rounds of auditions to secure a role in Battle Cry. It was not one or two auditions, but a series of intense screen tests before he defeated the other candidates, including names that would later become legends. James Dean and Paul Newman were both mentioned during the casting process. The fact that Tabb won the role showed that he was not merely a handsome face that had accidentally found its way in front of a camera. He had disciplined charisma and the ability to hold an audience's attention once the camera began rolling. Battle Cry became the breakthrough that elevated Tabb to the position of Warner Brothers' leading star. The studio saw him as an asset who could sell tickets, appear in magazines, and attract thousands of fan letters. But along with that power came an invisible collar. Warner Brothers controlled the scripts he read, the roles he accepted, the places where he appeared, and even the women who were supposed to be seen beside him. Under the old studio contract system, actors did not simply work for studios. They almost belonged to them. America took pride in personal freedom, but the studio gates operated like a kingdom of their own. Executives decided who would be turned into a prince, who would be thrown into the abyss, and which stories about a star would be allowed to exist in the press. Tabb was assigned the image of a healthy, sincere young man who was attractive enough to make female audiences buy tickets more than once. Trailers emphasized his body, his smile, and his youthful appearance. What interested the studio least was whether those roles helped him grow as an artist. He was often placed in roles that required little more than taking off his shirt looking attractive and making the female lead's heart race. Many years later, Tabb looked back on some of those projects with detachment, as though they had been extended advertisements rather than stories with real depth. I understand why he felt bitter. A man who spent his entire life searching for his identity was repeatedly asked to reproduce an image created by other people. Audiences saw an idol. Tabb saw a mask that was becoming increasingly difficult to remove. Then, the past returned at precisely the moment his career was reaching its peak. Tab wanted to change agents and separate himself from Henry Wilson. To some people, it was merely a business decision. To Wilson, it was seen as an act of betrayal. Information about Tab's arrest years earlier was given to Confidential, a notorious tabloid known for exploiting the private lives of stars. The most shocking part was not merely the article itself. It was the possibility that the man who had once built Tab's career had also helped place that same career on the chopping block. In 1955, the article appeared, and Tab believed everything was over. He lived in an era when a single insinuation could make an actor unemployable. He waited for Warner Brothers to cancel his contract, producers to turn their backs on him, and fans to tear his photographs from their walls. But what happened next was truly strange. Instead of allowing the scandal to define its star, Warner Brothers launched an even more aggressive publicity campaign. The studio pushed Tab into a series of romantic stories involving famous women, and ensured that every newspaper saw him as the most desirable bachelor in America. On Valentine's Day in 1956, Tab received more than 62,000 cards from fans. That number did not merely prove his popularity. It also demonstrated that a sufficiently powerful publicity machine could make the public look in whichever direction the studio chose. Debbie Reynolds was one of the women linked to Tab. Natalie Wood was another. In front of the cameras, they formed young, beautiful couples who were perfect for entertainment columns. Once the camera flashes stopped, each of them returned to a real life the press was not allowed to document. Tab loved Natalie like a close younger sister. She understood his situation and reportedly cooperated in their arranged public appearances. Cameras captured Tab and Natalie together, while afterward she could secretly meet Dennis Hopper, the man for whom she truly had feelings. Tab also had a date Hollywood did not want to see. He met Anthony Perkins at the Chateau Marmont, a hotel associated with countless romances, scandals, and secrets in the movie industry. A deep relationship quickly formed between the two young actors. Anthony Perkins possessed a sensitive beauty, intelligence, and a kind of charm completely different from Tab's. One was promoted as a healthy, outdoorsy young man, while the other had a delicate and mysterious presence. When they were together, they did not have to perform the roles the studios had written for them. Warner Brothers knew at least part of what was happening, but its priority was keeping Tab profitable. Paramount, the studio managing Perkins' career, was reportedly uncomfortable with the relationship. The two young men therefore loved each other under pressure from companies capable of controlling their futures. The frightening reality was that Hollywood studios did not merely control actors' roles, they also interfered in their stars' romantic lives to protect profits. Tab Hunter and Anthony Perkins continued meeting in secret, but professional ambition gradually created distance between them. Tab had longed to play baseball player Jimmy Pearsall in Fear Strikes Out, believing that the complex character would help him prove that he had more than good looks. When the role ultimately went to Perkins, professional disappointment blended with emotional pain, making their relationship difficult to repair. Neither man had necessarily betrayed the other. Both had been shaped by a system that made them believe every opportunity could be their last. Their relationship ended just as Tab's family life became increasingly difficult. His mother's mental health deteriorated severely, forcing Tab to place her in a treatment facility. In magazines, he remained Hollywood's perfect golden boy. But behind that image was a son caring for his mother, enduring heartbreak, and living under the condition that he had to conceal his true identity. Even so, Tab achieved major success in music when his song Young Love became a hit, carrying his name beyond the movie screen. However, that victory also revealed how Warner Brothers viewed him as a brand that could be sold through movies, records, magazine covers, and even staged dates. Eventually, Tab bought out his contract and left Warner Brothers, accepting that he would lose the machine that had built and protected his image. He wanted the freedom to choose roles and control his own life, but that freedom came at a very high price. Without the studio behind him, the offers gradually changed. The rumors became more difficult to control, and his career began losing its foundation. Tab realized that fame created by Hollywood could disappear quickly when a star was no longer willing to obey the industry's rules. Reinvention and lasting love. He moved into television, theater, and smaller projects. There were some interesting roles, but his time at the center of the Hollywood machine was over. The young man who had once received tens of thousands of Valentine's Day cards now had to learn how to survive without the constant glow of publicity shining on him. What saddens me most is that Tab spent most of his life unable to tell his mother the truth. She was a deeply religious Catholic, and he did not know how she would react if she heard her own son confirm what society at the time considered shameful. He suspected that she might have understood, because mothers often know more than their children realize. However, the two never had that direct conversation before she died. The door closed, leaving Tab with words that were never spoken and questions that no one could answer anymore. Later, his brother Walter also died. The person who had cared for Tab when they were children, frequently left alone, was now gone. The family members connected to his life before Hollywood disappeared one by one, leaving him feeling increasingly isolated. But then a strange, rebellious movie that was completely different from the films that had built Tab's image opened a new chapter. In 1981, he appeared in John Waters' Polyester alongside Divine, a performer who refused to follow Hollywood's traditional standards. Polyester did not try to transform Tab into a perfect idol. Instead, it used his former golden boy image in a satirical, daring, and deeply self-aware way. For the first time in years, Tab could play with the image Hollywood had once forced him to protect. The pairing of Tab and Divine was genuinely special. One had once represented the clean-cut masculinity of the 1950s, while the other was a symbol of breaking every boundary surrounding gender appearance and self-expression. On screen, they created an energy that was both funny and liberating. The success of Polyester inspired Tab to develop another project. While searching for financial support for a new movie, he met Alan Glazer, a young producer. That professional meeting ultimately became the beginning of the most important relationship of Tab's life. There was an age difference between them, but their bond became increasingly strong. Alan was not merely Tab's romantic partner. He also became his collaborator, the protector of his legacy, and the person who helped Tab look back on his past without bowing his head before it. Together, they made Lust in the Dust, a freewheeling Western comedy featuring Divine. The project allowed Tab to participate in filmmaking on terms much closer to his personal wishes, instead of simply obeying orders from a studio executive's office. His love with Alan gave Tab something fame had never provided, a sense of safety. They built a life together, cared for horses, worked and grew older side by side. No publicity campaign directed their relationship. Tab did not like being defined by fixed labels. He had spoken against the way society reduced a person to a few short words. What he wanted was not a fashionable title, but the right to live honestly without being treated like a scandal. Even after same-sex marriage became legal, Tab did not consider a certificate the deciding factor in the strength of a relationship. He and Alan had remained together for decades longer than countless glamorous marriages Hollywood had once placed on its front pages. According to the story that was shared, Tab once suggested formally legalizing their relationship. But what mattered more was the life they had already built together. To him, commitment existed in every day they stayed, every difficult period they endured, and every decision they made to protect each other when no cameras were present. Truth, freedom, and legacy. The year 2005 marked a major turning point when Tab Hunter released his memoir and publicly told the truth about his life. He acknowledged his sexuality, discussed past relationships, and reclaimed control over the story Hollywood and the tabloids had once exploited. This was not a confession filled with guilt. It was more like the moment when an older man finally removed the masks he had been forced to wear for decades. By speaking the truth in his own words, Tab stripped the secrets once used to threaten him of their power. Tab's story was later turned into a documentary, helping younger generations better understand an era when many LGBTQ actors had to live two lives: a perfect image in front of the camera, and their true selves permitted to exist only behind closed doors. He also gradually returned to the Catholic faith in his own way, no longer carrying the guilt that had been imposed on him when he was young. Tab realized that love, identity, and faith did not necessarily have to exclude one another, and that he did not need Hollywood's permission to live in harmony with all of them. During the final years of his life, Tab no longer chased his former glory. He lived quietly with his partner, Alan Glazer, and their horses. On July 8, 2018, only a few days before his 87th birthday, he died after a blood clot caused sudden cardiovascular complications. His death happened so quickly that Alan had almost no time to prepare emotionally. However, Tab left the world after finding love, building a home, and telling the truth in his own voice. When people look back at photographs of Tab in his youth, they do not merely see a blonde heartthrob smiling for a camera. They also see a young man trained to conceal the battle taking place inside him. Warner Brothers once sold the public an image of a perfect bachelor waiting for the right woman, while Tab only wanted to love someone without fearing that the relationship would destroy his career. The darkest secret of his life was not that he loved men. It was that a system made him believe that his love had to be hidden, corrected, or sacrificed in exchange for his continued existence in the public eye. It took Tab many years to live at peace with himself, but in the end, he succeeded. What deserves to be remembered most is not the fame, the posters, or the thousands of fan letters, but the fact that he lived long enough to understand that he had never been a mistake. Tab's story reminds us not to judge too quickly those who once chose silence, because sometimes silence is not cowardice, but the only way to survive. The greatest lesson he left behind is that we should build a world where no one has to choose between love and the future, between faith and honesty, or between a career and the right to live as their true self. Hollywood once defined Tab Hunter by his body, his box office earnings, and his fake dates. But after the studio lights went dark, what remained was a man who had spent his entire life searching for his way back to his own name, his own heart, and his own truth. Which person in Tab's story made you think the most? The mother who sacrificed her entire life, Anthony Perkins, who was separated from him by career pressure, Alan Glazer, who stayed beside him, or Tab himself, who needed decades before he could finally live freely? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you appreciate honest stories about classic Hollywood, please like this video and subscribe to Ryan's Hollywood Uncovered. Your support helps us continue reopening the files that studios once wanted the world to forget. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. Be kind to the people we know only through the screen, because fame never tells the whole story. I'm Ryan, and I'll see you again on our next journey into Hollywood's darkest corners.